Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, a look at Jamaican women in violent crimes. And in the second watch, questioning the construction of elaborate monuments in Jamaican cemeteries. For our social media question, we ask, what are your thoughts on mini mansions or human-sized statues on grave sites? We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel. And also WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
All right, today's I quote is from John Lennon. This one says, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans."
Okay, good morning, Jutta.
Good morning.
Yes, but still I'm enjoying the music there from, is it Israel Houghton and Fred Hammond?
That's right, Israel Houghton and Fred Hammond, yes.
Yeah, so really, upbeat music there.
That's right, thank you.
Okay, the first watch will be back after this break.
In life, the more you have, the more you have to lose.
The more you love, the more you worry. The more you earn, the less you sleep.
The more people rely on you, the more you have on your mind.
I have peace of mind.
Knowing that whatever I own
and whoever I care about are covered by the very best.
With Satipro Life and Advantage General, get life, health, and general insurance to help you protect what matters most.
Jamaica, the national budget is here and it affects you, your family, your future, your community. It's all connected. Now is the time to get informed and get involved. How will this year's budget impact your daily life? What opportunities and changes are ahead? Tune in on Tuesday, March 11 as the Honorable Faber Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, presents the central government budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. The national budget is everybody's business. Jamaica, this is your future. Be a part of it. Visit mof.gov.jm for details.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Happy be young man, got to be young man.
On the next episode of The Mailbox, we close out the month of February with The Journey with Reggae Part 2. While reggae music is most often associated with Rastafarianism, it is deeply rooted in the Christian church as well. Many artists have woven Christian themes into reggae music by combining it with elements of traditional hymns to praise the Lord in a uniquely Jamaican way. Let's hear from award-winning veteran songwriter, producer, and founder of Catalyst Crew, Mr. Paul Barkley, about his musical journey. The Mailbox is brought to you by Solid PVC Pipes, manufactured in Jamaica by Fosterage Company Limited. That's Wednesday, February 26th at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station, Love 101, celebrating 32 years of sharing hope, touching hearts. The Mailbox, Monday.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, Jamaican women are oftentimes regarded as victims of violent crimes, but not as perpetrators. However, recent studies are showing that women in Jamaica are actually involved in a variety of criminal activities, including gang violence, human trafficking, and drug crimes. In essence, they are no longer just seen as innocent victims. So what are the issues and implications associated with such findings? Well, to discuss this, we have joining us in this, the First Watch, Dr. Diana Thorburn, Director of Research at Capri, and Dr. Paul Bourne, Research Consultant. Good morning to you both. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Dr. Thorburn. Good morning, Dr. Bourne. Good to have you both with us. Well, we'll begin with you, Dr. Thorburn. It is my understanding that the new or renewed focus on this topic is also a result of recent research conducted by Capri. Can you tell us the name of that research? And in a nutshell, what were the findings?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this report. It's called Hits and Misses, Women in Organized Violence. In this report, in this study, we attempted to locate where are women in the organized violence ecosystem of Jamaica. So we were looking very specifically at women's roles in gangs, and which is the main form of organized violence in Jamaica. And I say this because women's criminality spans many, many different types of crimes. Women mostly commit non-violent crimes, what they call category 2 crimes, fraud, larceny by servant, which is when an employee steals from their boss. In fact, women do that more than men do. And even when they do commit violent crimes, they commit them in the context of interpersonal and domestic conflicts, not in the context of organized crime and violence. However, what we did find was that they play important and strategic facilitating roles within organized crime, and those do not show up in the statistical data from the JCF or the Department of Correctional Services in terms of arrests and incarcerations. So what we found was that the statistical data does not tell us very much. But if we look more broadly at the qualitative data and also do some more contextual analysis of the statistical data, we get to see more, I don't say clearly because their roles are still quite hidden, but we get a better picture of where the women are.
But basically you're saying they are involved. Many women are involved, but it's difficult to pick up that data.
Well, I wouldn't know we don't know if there are many.
Quantitatively.
This is a tricky thing. We would say that we know that women are involved. We have evidence that they are. What we don't know is the extent in terms of the numbers which they're involved. For example, last year of all gang arrests, nearly 500 gang arrests, 4% were women. Now, we don't know if that's an increase or a decrease because of data issues with, we don't have a baseline. We don't know what it was in 2023 or 2022 with specific regard to gang-related arrests. So, but if we just take it on its face, 4% doesn't seem like a lot. And then we don't know from there how many of those proceeded to any kind of charge or conviction. So we don't know if many women are involved, but we do know women are involved.
Okay.
They are involved in strategic roles.
Hearing it loud and clear. Dr. Paul Bourne, have you conducted any similar research? And either way, what are your opening thoughts on the topic?
I have conducted similar research using data up to 2024 from 2014. And what we have found is that almost 3.1% of the various aggravated crimes or major crimes, we're talking about murder, shootings, robbery, aggravated assault, are committed by women. So the issue of are women involved? Absolutely yes. And what we are seeing is that the figures in terms of the percentages are somewhat the same across the 11 years, where we're talking about from 2.4% to as high as 4.3% of women involved in murders. 12% of women are involved in aggravated assault. And about 1% of women are involved in shooting, actual shooting, using the trigger to do shootings. And between 1 and 4% of women are involved in robberies. Those are what we are finding. So are they involved? Absolutely, yes.
Yes. And the nature of their involvement, from what you're saying, which category of crime are they more involved in?
Aggravated
most
assault.
involved in?
Aggravated assault. They are most involved in aggravated assault.
Did you say 12% earlier?
12% of women are involved in aggravated assault, and this is over the 11-year period.
Wow. Dr. Thorburn, how is that bit of information hitting you?
Well, no, that's exactly what we found as well. But I think, remember, we're talking about women in organized violence. What the data would suggest to us, Dr. Bourne may have a different reading of it, is that we absolutely do know that women commit violent crime, but they're committing them within interpersonal and domestic context, not in the context of gang-related violence. Gang-related violence is predominantly shootings. And as you would have heard, he said 1% of shootings were, I'm not sure if he's talking about arrest or conviction data, would have been women. We actually didn't find, in the data that we looked at, we didn't see any shootings attributed to women. We do know that women courier the guns, they carry the ammunition, they buy and sell the guns, they ship them, they transport them, they drive the assassin to the location, they point out the target. But what we were not able to find an instance of a woman actually pulling the trigger herself. And so in that regard, we're in agreement that women do commit violent crimes, but in the very specific context of Jamaica's organized violence ecosystem, which is mainly gangs, we were not able to identify data that would have suggested to us that there are many of them playing a dominant role.
Dr. Bourne, would you say that you have come across findings where the women actually pull the trigger?
Yes, we have actually found that in terms of our data that we have actually used, in terms of their arrest, not necessarily their conviction. But my study was not looking at organized or non-organized crime, but it's talking about their involvement into various major crimes.
Dr. Bourne, the roles of the women, can you say more in terms of the specific roles from your findings?
Women have been involved in major crimes for a long time. It's not yesterday. This has been happening. I recall years ago when I was living in a particular area in Jamaica, in a city area, where I knew of women involvement in terms of being couriers for gun. And I've seen with my eyes where women have actually had gun in their hands. So I'm saying I've seen of issues. I'm fully aware that women are involved, but in terms of the numbers, all the numbers are just doing is saying that this matter is widespread across the 14 parishes in Jamaica, across the 15 parishes now in Jamaica in terms of their involvement. Now, what I agree with in terms of what Dr. Thorburn is actually saying is that what we do not know specifically is the full extent to which women are actually involved in these things. Because what the data is actually showing, we are fully aware in Jamaica that sometimes arrest doesn't necessarily mean you're involved.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Bourne. We're up on a break. All right, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Do more on the road. Discover a new and convenient way to send money abroad with the GK1 app. Download GK1 from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to send with Western Union today.
The time by Grace Kennedy Remittance is
7:16 a.m.
King of the Lord, we've been here for 25 years and we are
Guardian Life.
getting started, leading the way, protecting you and yours at every stage.
Guardian Life.
King of the Lord, caring for family, caring for you, looking at the life that's the way to.
For every generation, for every stage, your partner for 25 years. Guardian Life.
King of the Lord.
Are you looking for modern faucets to transform your home or commercial property? Then Home of Faucets is your place to be. We are located at Shop 42 Leaf Mall, Caledonia Road, Mandeville, Manchester. We also provide free island-wide next-day delivery. Contact us on Instagram at Home of Faucets, by telephone at 876-492-4810 or homeoffaucets.com. Home of Faucets, contributing to modern satisfaction.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and this is the first watch. We're looking at Jamaican women in violent crimes. In so doing, we have online Dr. Paul Bourne, research consultant, and Dr. Diana Thorburn, Director of Research at Capri. I think before the break, Dr. Bourne, you were drilling down in terms of the direct involvement of some women.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that the statistics do not reveal the full extent of women involvement into crimes. Because what we have in Jamaica is that many of the cases of crimes are not caught. All right? So if you're saying that 3% of women are involved, then if you were to use any form of extrapolation from what happens in the real on the world in terms of crime involvement, that figure could be as high as 20% in terms of their involvement. What's certain, having done a qualitative research about 5 years ago in a particular community in Jamaica, which is a violent-prone community in Jamaica, I was actually informed by a number of persons who are actually involved in crime that women are sometimes the instigators of many of the things. Many of the murders that you see and the robberies and rapes are commanded by women. Women give permission or actually instructed who ought to die, who ought to be shot. And those things are underplayed. The statistics do not reveal those things, but they are highly involved. And many of them are involved. And sometimes persons are fully aware as to the female who's actually involved in this process.
And some of them are done it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they are so quiet with it. And a number of times men are sometimes deceived by in terms of women involvement, particularly the women who are the mothers and cousins and wives of these dons.
Dr. Thorburn, from your research, were you able to determine why women get involved in these violent crimes, whatever nature? Is there an advantage, quote unquote, to the gangs, to those who are said to do wrong and evil in our society?
Yeah, well, we found 3 drivers of women's involvement in organized violence in Jamaica. They are somewhat overlapping, so it's hard to say where one ends and the other begins. But the 3 main drivers would be the family, personal dynamics, the relational dynamics between themselves and gangs. Women, what we found in the qualitative aspect of our study was that they joined gangs because these were the dominant force in the communities where they grew up. They were either born into gang families or they were born into communities where their siblings, their parents, their partners were in gangs, usually top-tier members or dons gangs. So the personal and family connection is an important driver. A second driver is the financial motive, similarly to men. People join gangs to, you could say, earn a living, to pursue financial prosperity, for power and for influence, all of these things that would drive anyone to join a gang. I think what makes it a little bit different for both men and women who are, I would say, socialized in an environment where that kind of a activity and that kind of a group is normal, and where that kind of a group is powerful, is that is a kind of natural, there's an easier point of entry. It's a more obvious choice of quote unquote profession for a woman who's born into a family or born into a community where that's the dominant force to go that way. And then the third element that we found as a driver is the community itself. We did 5 case studies in our report, and 4 of the 5 of women who have been convicted or arrested of important facilitation roles in gangs, including as couriers, as bankers. These women were all born in and grew up in gang-dominated informal communities. All of them had a significant family or romantic relationship with a gang leader. So we see it as 3 things: the family connection, the pursuit of financial gain, and the community driver. Those are the 3 drivers that we found.
Yes, similar thing for you, Dr. Bourne?
Absolutely, but I want to go to another factor to that, and it's relating to power. A number of women actually are involved in these activities because of power and perceived power. Women sometimes wield the power over other women and other people when they are part of these gangs. They'll tell you, listen, who you think you are, and what they're able to do with that sort of power. And what sometimes some persons are not even aware is that some of the simple women that they meet, and I've actually lived in some of these areas to try to understand these phenomena, are so powerful that they are feared, even more than the men.
So it's not just male ego we're talking about, female ego as well.
Absolutely. And a matter of fact, sometimes many of the crimes that are committed are only because the woman actually said, this person ought to die. And the male may not have a reason to kill the person. But the fact that the female has actually said that this is the person that ought to die, that person is going to die.
Wow. That's scary. Any demographics that you like to share with us, Dr. Thorburn, especially in terms of the age of these women, perhaps their educational and financial status, anything like that is worthy of sharing?
Well, so this is where we don't have the quantitative data. We have to go by the case studies of women who have already entered the justice system, where we can get the demographic data. We can make some assumptions based on that, or some extrapolations based on that. So as I said, we did 5 case studies, 4 of which are of women who had already kind of entered their data into the justice system. One was of Stephanie Muma Christie, who was the female defendant who was convicted in the Wandon gang trial. 2 others were women who had been arrested and charged. But something Dr. Bourne mentioned, which is very important, is the invisibility. Both of these women, interestingly, it was when they were arrested and charged and they came kind of to the surface as active and influential members of these gangs, that was when they were targeted. And in both cases, one was from the family gang, the other one was Sudeen Hilton. Both very similar demographic, both were from informal communities in St. James, both had family members who were in gangs, both were in relationships with top-tier gang leaders, in one case with the Don. And when they were arrested and charged, that was when they came to light, and they were then killed by gang rivals. So the invisibility is very important to their strategic roles within the gang and to their own ability to continue operating. Because once they come to the surface and they're identified as these influential members of the gang, these people who can give directives, who can give orders, So Dean Hilton was known to be very powerful. She identified targets. She carried the gun. She handed the gun to the assassin. She drove the assassin there, pointed out the target. And that was what she was ultimately arrested for. Even though she didn't actually pull the trigger, she did everything else that led up to that man's murder. So
these are the allegations. Okay.
Yeah.
But
The demographic is from an informal community, grown up in an informal community, and having a family or other personal close relationship to influential top tier leaders in the gang, even the Don themselves.
Right. Bit of information there, reportedly. Dr. Bourne, anything you're able to pick up in terms of demographics?
Oh, when you look at, I'm talking about general research now, we're talking about the age of persons who are involved in crimes in Jamaica. We're normally talking about those who are, say, 18 to about 35.
That goes for the women as well?
Both women and men. That is normally the age range of persons who are mostly involved in crimes in Jamaica.
Interesting. What do you say, ladies and gentlemen, to those women who may argue that they have little or no choice in the matter? That if they don't get involved at this level, they'll be killed or their families will be killed. Beginning with you, Dr. Bourne. What's your response?
I think that's a myth, because the person you're actually looking at was actually born in an in-state area. I was born.
It's a myth. No woman faces that situation.
No, your choice is everything that you do. Because I said to you that I was born and grown in one. I was born and grown in Tivoli Gardens. And I'm looking at you here. And I've never held a gun. All right? And I have family members who lived in other places. So I'm saying all these things are a matter of choice. And some persons may not have the same choice that Paul Bourne has or other persons do have. But we all have a choice. Now, what I'm fully aware, I remember 1 year I was actually teaching at University of the West Indies, and I had this gentleman in my class, and I cried when he died. His father was a reputed Don, and his father was killed in some altercation. And then the group members actually said that it was his turn to take over the gang. And he said no, and he was killed. What is my point? My point is you have a choice to do things. But sometimes the fear and the perceived consequences of that fear drive the individual into these gangs. But you do have a choice.
So you're saying the dilemma is not that the dilemma does not exist, but you have a choice whether one way or the other.
Indeed.
And you have to bear that in mind. So we should never say that you never have a choice. You always have a choice.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because sometimes is the issue.
Hearing it loud and clear. Dr. Thorburn, how would you respond to that? Same way?
Yeah, I think perhaps the only thing the nuance I might add to that is that the choices are perhaps more limited for people who grow up in these communities. And also a lot of it is the luck of the draw of the family you were actually born into, the household that you were born into. You know, obviously we know, Jamaica is a country which has a very, I guess, a positive aspect of being that people can realize tremendous upward mobility through education. I think it's probably, if we were ever to do kind of a survey of upward mobility across the world, I'm pretty sure Jamaica would come out on top in terms of people being able to move up in one generation from one socioeconomic class or bracket to another. But that is entirely dependent on the household in which you were born into, the stability of that household, the priority on education of that household. So yes, you can have two people who are growing up side to side in a gang-dominated community, and one joins the gang and the other one goes on to be a PhD statistician. That's entirely possible. And that's dependent on who is in that house and who is directing. I mean, we do have some research on the family structure of people who become members of gangs, both internationally and from here in Jamaica, where there's a strong correlation with family instability, with single parent households, with inattentive caregivers, and so on. So it's not that people don't have a choice. I think that for some people, though, the choices are more
limited. Okay. Well said. I think that's a fitting note on which to end. Thank you so very much, Dr. Thorborn and Dr. Bourne, for joining us this morning. Have a safe and productive day.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Joined by Gem Bank is
7:31.
Will that be cash or card?
Card.
You have a supermarket card from Flow too?
Yes. It's just like Flow paying for my groceries.
Sign up for Yard and Road for only $6,300 plus GCT, and you too can get a $10,000 supermarket card. Get Yard and Road, the plan that pays you back. Conditions apply. Government pensioners, the Accountant General's Department's mobile life certificate drive starts on February 27 at Trelawney Parish Library, February 28 the St. Anne Parish Library, March 1 St. Catherine Parish Library in Spanish Town, March 3 Morant Villas in St. Thomas and Hanover Parish Library, March 4 Westmoreland Parish Library, March 6 St. Mary Parish Library, March 7 St. James Methodist Church in Maypen, March 8 the Greater Portmore Library, March 10 St. Matthew's Anglican Church in Santa Cruz, March 11 our final stop will be at the Portland Parish Library in Port Ontario. Remember, life certificates can be submitted at the St. James and Manchester Parish Libraries, Ministry of Finance, and the AGD office at 21 Dominica Drive using the Dropbox.
Yes, it's tax time. March 17 is the due date for your income tax returns. Self-employed individuals are required to file their annual returns SO4 and estimating the return SO4A, income tax, education tax, NHT, and NIS due and payable on one return. Companies are required to file the ITO2, which is the annual return, and the estimated return ITO7. Visit jamaicatax.gov.jm or call 888-TAX-HELP for details. Tax Administration Jamaica, working together to serve you even better.
Looking at the light, we've been here for 25 years and we are
Guardian Life.
just getting started. Leading the way, protecting you and yours at every stage.
Guardian Life.
Looking at the light, caring for family, caring for you. Looking at the light, there's no way to.
For every generation, for every stage, your partner for 25 years. Guardian Life.
Looking at the light.
Well, if you want buy appliances for your home with the quality high and the price low, get it on Habasco. Get it on Habasco. Everything with the need, it's never need on Habasco. Your home, look at you from that
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are really saying and doing. In the Observer, Police Federation pulls plug on legal fees assistance for embattled former chairman. Also, we see that medical consultants likely headed back to work today. That's good. Also, dancehall star Squash arrested in Florida on gun charges. And Trump says he will sell gold residency permits for $5 million US. And then finally, elderly Barbadian attorney faces jail time for theft. Okay. Those are some of the stories in our newspapers. Coming up next, we read some of the feedback from our social media question. What are your thoughts on mini mansions or human-sized statues on grave sites? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 997-3125. Soon come back.
Mama work hard, for real. To do the most we send me and my brother go school. So, the dream was always to go to university. Well, I fulfilled 2 dreams with 1 Jane Bank savings plan, you know. Further my education, and I make mama proud.
Stop wishing you could. With your Jane Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jane Bank will help you find a way.
There's a need for a place like this. 8 crucial portfolios under one roof. For your convenience with expedience, your experience is the real difference. Where policy impacts change. Here at JC, feel the difference.
See the difference of Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation.
See the difference.
Meg JC.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Jamaica's gangs are like packs of rats. They live in filth and try and drag us all in there with rats, spreading the disease of violence and corruption everywhere. But like a pack of rats, they can be detected rats with your help. If you have information on gangs, call Crime Stop on 311. This message is brought to you by Crime Stop and their marketing partners, Lime and NCB.
Happy be young man, got to be young man. On the next episode of The Mailbox, we close out the month of February with The Journey with Reggae Part 2. While reggae music is most often associated with Rastafarianism, it is deeply rooted in the Christian church as well. Many artists have woven Christian themes into reggae music by combining it with elements of traditional hymns to praise the Lord in a uniquely Jamaican way. Let's hear from award-winning veteran songwriter, producer, and founder of Catalyst Crew, Mr. Paul Barkley, about his musical journey. The Mailbox is brought to you by Solid PVC Pipes, manufactured in Jamaica by Fosterage Company Limited. That's Wednesday, February 26th at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station, Love 101, celebrating 32 years of sharing hope, touching hearts. The Mailbox, Monday.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Jukal for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answered today's question. What are your thoughts on mini mansions or human-sized statues on grave sites? Joka?
All right, so we have some responses. The first one is from Cherry. Cherry says the use of human statues in cemeteries can be frightening, especially in the night. At first, they started out with houses and other things. Why was it allowed in the first place? Because it will go on to all kinds of humongous statues if there are no guidelines, laws, or orders. This person says, this one is tricky. This next person, their name is Kim. Kim says, this one is tricky. On one hand, I do believe people should be able to mourn in their personal way, as long as it does not affect others. But on the other hand, I wonder if this could be a form of idolatry. So yeah, those are responses.
You can ever say that yet?
I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen large cutouts of people who pass, and
yeah.
So yeah, it's quite frightening.
It's spooky in the night, isn't it?
Just unlike the first glance.
Yeah,
because you're like, wait, you're supposed to dead, but but yeah, that's it really.
All right. Well, we segue into our second watch by noting that structures such as mausoleums and sepulchres are not new in Jamaica. Visit ancient cemeteries and you'll find a few. As a matter of fact, visit some newer cemeteries and you'll also find more modern versions of sepulchres that look like full mini mansions and statue-like creations. Well, To tell us more about these developments, we have online Calvin Lynn, owner of Lynn's Funeral Home, and Dwayne Harris, history educator. Good morning to you both.
Good morning to everybody.
Yes, that's Mr. Lynn. Good morning.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Dwayne Harris, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. Happy to be with you.
Great. Thanks for joining us. I'll begin with you, Calvin Lynn. Can you describe for us your experience in terms of the trend, the construction of elaborate monuments in Jamaican cemeteries?
Well, first of all, I've seen them. Even yesterday, I was on the road in another parish and I passed by a public cemetery operated by the municipal corporation and I saw some. And personally, I don't think it should be allowed in public cemeteries.
Oh?
Well, look, as I am a former parish councillor, and I know if the law has been changed since I left office 1989, I don't know. The point is, the public cemetery is for the public as it determines. Now, the person building a tomb after the deceased is interred, I know they have to apply to the parish council for permission to build a tomb.
Yes.
A tomb is an ordinary thing that is more or less acceptable. These fandangos that I see in some of the public cemeteries shouldn't be. I don't know why those councils allow it. I can't say I don't operate them. But that for the persons to construct them in the private place, meaning family plot, fine. That is their responsibility and whatever. But for public spaces, I don't think they should be allowed. To me, they're unsightly. And as I heard on your program earlier about being spooky and so on, yes, it can be. And I would say that because I'm not easily frightened because I'm in the funeral business now, going 51 years.
Yes, sir.
Be that as it may, as I said, I don't think it's right. It is, for me, unsightly. It could be untidy. It could be seen as an obstacle, as an hindrance. It's not neat. I believe that serenity, if someone did dignified look in memory of your loved one, should be maintained. That is my view.
And you use words like fandangos. What's the most outrageous you have seen, Mr. Lynn?
Well, from memory, I can't even really remember just to say that. Like you see a tipper truck, apart from the house style. I don't know, but it was to me, if you were to go around and take pictures and put it in whatever form to show the public, if you're a print media man or whatever, but to me, it is not proper. That's all I can say now.
Yes, sir, loud and clear. Dwayne Harris, as a history educator, what can you tell us about the history, if any, behind such construction?
Well, as we all know, our society emerged from the era of slavery. During the period of slavery, the burials and those things were very simple. You died today, you were buried tomorrow, that kind of thing. It was only the rich, the planters, who could really afford the more ostentatious types of burial. But we see moving into the 20th century where you have things like refrigeration and those things enable us to preserve bodies longer so that we can have the funeral at a much later date. Then we see more ostentatious types of burial styles and death rituals. But it's not just not the grave or the sepulchre. It is also a series of things that are involved. The whole notion of the dead yard, the 9-night, the set up, the grave digging. All these things have become more elaborate over time, especially within the 20th century. So we see instead of having a traditional setup, we see duppy bands. People are having live music, and
they call them duppy bands, Mr. Harris?
Yes, they call them duppy bands. A lot of these bands, live bands that go around and play at funerals, all types of music, religious, reggae, all types. So it's becoming a more festive occasion. it seemed to me Jamaicans are realizing that the first word in funeral is fun. So it,
that's an original for me. Interesting. Go ahead, man.
So it's becoming more festive, and of course we now have a situation where
I'm sorry, Mr. Harry. We want to hear more about this fun part of the word funeral. We're up on a break. We'll be right back.
You're invited to listen to Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. We'll give you tips on how to make your money count, how to save, and how to grow your wealth. It's all inside Dollars and Cents, brought to you by BPM Financial Limited, taking you higher. That's Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
King of the Lord, we've been here for 25 years.
Guardian Light.
Leading the way, protecting you and yours at every day.
Guardian Light.
Looking at the light, caring for family, caring for you. Looking at the light, there's no way to.
For every generation, for every stage, your partner for 25 years. Guardian Light.
Happy be young, man, got to be young.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. In this the second watch, we are examining the construction of elaborate monuments in Jamaica's cemeteries. In so doing, we have online Calvin Lynn, owner of Lynn's Funeral Home, and Dwayne Harris, history educator. Before the break, Mr. Harris, I think you were telling us about the fun in the word funeral and what is taking place now in Jamaica.
Right. Yeah. So I was saying that we see in the 20th century with increasing material culture, and indeed people have more funds. They're able to live out certain dreams. You know, we have to remember that the funeral rites and all that come with it. It's based on the living and not the dead. And the person's state of mind, those who are funding these arrangements. So many of them feel the need. There's a cultural need. Some of us feel to show that we have done something properly and to be associated with something that is well done. So we tend to spend. And of course, almost every family these days has a relative overseas who's funding or who must come to the funeral. You know, if you're having a funeral and there is no overseas person, then it's almost as if the person who died is nobody of importance. So there are all these factors that stream into things, which of course leads to a lot of pressure and indeed exploitation within the family. People are under duress to fund these massive funeral activities. You know, the notion of the grave digging, which has become a big thing where, you know, when the grave is being dug, a lot of people turn up who are not doing any digging, but they're there to eat. Children take break from school, that kind of thing. So it has become a big social gathering. In my estimation, I think it's misplaced priorities, but it seemed to me it satisfies a cultural need to be accepted, that your family looks good in the eyes of others, that you're associated with a pleasant event. Death is now a pleasant business based on the funeral industry, and everybody wants to be a part of it. The dancehall culture is feeding to it as well, among other things. So it's a whole mixture of things that have evolved with time, and but I would hasten to say not everybody's doing it. A lot of funerals are still simple, but of course there are others that are way over the top. When I pass the Anota Bay Cemetery, I see some mini palaces and life-size photographs.
Tell me about it.
Which I find very interesting. It could be a passing phase, but we'll never know.
Yeah, and even going further, Mr. Harris, our descendants, anything in history near to this, they may not have been as elaborate, but were there structures built or items left, anything similar but not the same in this regard?
You mean item like when we
At the graves, yes, at the graves.
I'm sorry?
At the graves themselves, in terms of our history, our descendants, were there anything like that, even closely, remotely remote to it?
If I should say this, the Chinese cemetery, which is sort of almost closed on Walton Park Road in the corporate area. Well, to me, that is more clannish, right? You call it Chinese cemetery, because most of the Chinese would be buried there. You will see monuments there based on their culture, right? Different structures, but it would be more or less in a moderate way.
Not as elaborate as now.
Right, you see, because the excitement or the SUN part of funeral, that has crept into the industry is just to create excitement, right? And a form of attraction. And I'll tell you, that came about because of the proliferation of the untrained operators in the industry. And I say that without malice. Just to speak the truth, they do that. They have the vehicles with ribbons and all kind of fandangles to attract the public, so to speak, so that they would probably be seen as someone who you should use when the time comes, and so on and so forth. So, but to me, the decency in funeral and the respect for the departed soul. Yes, we know the Bible tells us, rejoice and give thanks for the life and experience of the departed soul, but in a proper way. Some of the music, I have had complaints from citizens asking me as president of the association to really, what can we do about it? The noise abatement act, I speak with the police, the blaring the music, inappropriate music. They have to play dancehall music at a funeral, man. That is to me out of order and courageous and disrespectful.
What if the person who died would have loved that and also requested that type of a response?
Can you say that person left it in a will, play this at my funeral?
They might have expressed it verbally. I know, and these are the desired wishes of the individual.
When you carry a will to the court of law, you don't deal with no verbal thing, you use paperwork. When we are doing cremation, did the person leave written instructions for the disposal of his or her remains and such like? So it's just that people take it up into their own hands and do what they see suitable to them.
Yeah, well, yeah, I beg to differ. I think that in some cases, persons have made such requests.
Everybody have them one opinion.
Yeah. Let me ask Mr. Harris, what's your take on that, Mr. Harris? So you respond to those who say, boy, this is a visible sign of endearment for my departed loved one, or the person actually requested these monuments.
Well, I mean, people have a right to request, what they want. But as I said, it is the funeral and the execution of the funeral is about the living, and of course, it is the person who is alive who will actually execute. So you can make any request you want, and of course, what we believe about the state of the dead. So if I believe that I can see who's at my funeral and that kind of thing, I can request it. But if I believe that when I'm dead, that is it, then it might be of less importance to me. But as I have said, the pressure is on the living as to how, because of our cultural, ways, we may feel the need to look good in the eyes of others. So there's pressure within the family and pressure between families, especially in some communities where we want to say, boy, that the Harris family put away grandma very well, and everybody in the community knows that we spent a lot of money,
Yes.
Feeding people nightly, having a big hearse, a big casket, a big grave, and copious amounts of liquor and foods, etc., etc. So the pressure is really on the living and how we view the state of the dead.
What do we do in addressing this then? If these concerns, as expressed by both of you, are solid, meaningful concerns, how do we address this as a nation? Calvin Lynn?
It's a bit difficult. As I've said before, the public cemeteries are under the jurisdiction of the municipal corporation. There are rules. It's like if you were to do a housing development, you have to construct a house. You have to apply for the building plans at the council. There are guidelines, there are rules.
Mm.
So I'm saying in the public cemeteries, they should not be allowed. But at your family plot, your land, you pay your taxes, you own the land, you're free to do as you choose.
All right, so you're advocating for clear rules, guidelines, these constructions in the cemeteries, especially the public ones. You're saying, yes, Mr. Harris.
Right, as I said, people always do what they want to do. We have to look at the psychological and the cultural things that motivate us. Some of it is driven by religion, etc., etc. But I would just like to look at some Muslims in Saudi Arabia. A few years ago, some royal from Saudi Arabia died. He may have been the king. And he had a very simple ceremony, buried in a public cemetery in an unmarked grave, because in that sect of Islam there is a fear of idolatry. So they don't want any big thing. No, just imagine any person being buried in a public cemetery in an unmarked grave. I mean, that is a big disgrace in our culture. Recently I saw where Camilla of England, Charles's wife, her brother died, and he was buried in a wicker basket kind of casket. Very simple. It seemed to me that as a people, we need to re-examine our culture and see what is important for our progress. What are we using? The Jews bury themselves very simple. They have a lot of money too. What do we use our funds for education, for investments, for the future? We can't be so tied to the past that we're burying hundreds of thousands of dollars in the ground every time there's a funeral at the expense of the future of the family.
Yeah. So Mr. Lynn has mentioned the legal aspect. He's advocating for that. Ms. Harris, anything more pointedly in terms of your recommendations and suggestions to address these concerns? What about the classroom, for example?
I'm not sure how these things, people would have to look, we as a people need to look within ourselves and know what our priorities are. It comes down to that. We need to know what our priorities are. I don't think this can be legislated or anything like that. People, because we're always going to find a way to do what we want to do.
Against the legislation that Mr. Lynn is advocating?
I'm sorry?
Are you against the legislation that Mr. Lynn is advocating?
I don't know if everything can be legislated. And I don't know if it makes sense to legislate things that people won't follow.
What I'm saying,
I'm saying it has to come down
operated by the parish councils, no municipal corporation. There are rules, right? And there are laws. So if there are amendments, changes, fine. But for all I know, you should check it out and hear what the local authorities are saying, whether they will allow that or not. For instance, in the cemeteries that are operated by the local authorities, they don't permit sepulchres to be built there. It has to be a vault that the casket is lowered into and sealed. Yeah.
Okay.
There are rules. So it's a matter of trying to please everybody.
Yeah.
Repeat, you have your own land, and there are no restrictions as long as the place for accommodation of the remains is sealed according to public health laws.
We have to leave it there.
No problem.
I have to leave it there. Thank you so very much for joining us, gentlemen. Interesting, insightful discussion. Have a safe and productive day.
You too.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for discussion of topical and, yes, controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guest. I'm Dylan Toussaint, returning you to Love in the Morning.